It's so good to be here. It is just so good to be here, and I'm just so happy to be here with all of you. So thank you, thank you. In keeping with our theme of being unstoppable, last week I did speak about the power of commitment, because it's only through commitment that we can live our authentic self. Living a committed life is the only way for us to live authentically, because we have to rely on faith. We have to rely on the higher forces of God to work through us and into our life. We can't just do that with our small-minded thinking. And so when I talk about commitment, I'm not talking about a decision, right? Or like we can say things like, I'm so committed to getting the house clean this weekend, right? But that's really just a goal. Like any of us could get the house cleaned by the weekend. We don't have to step into faith to get our house cleaned, most of us, right? So I don't know. I may have a little problem on that front, but my husband has faith, so. But see, when we're committed, when we are committing to something, when we're living a committed life, we're making a pledge to ourselves to show up in our life in a bigger way and rely on faith to make it happen. And so an example of committed living, and living bigger than what we could handle on our own. In my own life, I am committed to improving my health and getting stronger. And that is a big commitment. I could have, if it had been easy, I already would have done it. If it had been easy, when I first met Taylor and Nick, I would have been like, oh, I don't need your gym. I'm all fit. I don't need any help, right? If I could have done it on my own, I would have done it. And so that this is a commitment. Living a healthy lifestyle is easy for some people, but it's not for me, right? I need the help and the support. And even here, like growing unity, we're a committed group. Like we've got our board, like we're always talking about the next exciting thing that we want to do here. So we are committed. That's something that just one person couldn't do on their own. So that's what I'm talking about, being committed to showing up in a bigger way. We're being committed to live our sacred mission, our reason for being here, to live our soul's purpose, to say yes to the life that we were given. And so how does good health and how does getting stronger, how does that fit into my own sacred mission, right? Because somebody might think, well, just go to a gym and stop eating so much, right? But see, I had to rely on the unity principles to do this. And I had to trust and know and have faith that I would have the help. My sacred mission is actually unity. My sacred mission is living in these principles, remembering God is all things. God is all things, and there's not one spot on this planet where God is not. God is infinite and at work through each and every one of us. And so if I can get help and get stronger and have better well-being in my own life, I did this only through faith, only because I remembered that with faith, anything is possible. And I was directed to Taylor. I was directed to Nick. I was just going to point at him, but I don't see him. There he is back there. Okay. See, and so we are put on the path that we are meant to be on when we say yes to life. And so that's why, for me, showing up to my life and taking care of myself and getting stronger, that is part of my sacred mission, so that I can say to anybody who thinks their thing is hard, I can say, you know what I had to do? And if I can do it, anybody can do it. If I can show up, anybody can. Because it was hard. Right? It's hard. When you give up sugar and flour and you see somebody eating a piece of birthday cake and you just want to squeeze dish soap all over it so they can't enjoy it either, okay? It's not easy for some of us to say no to those things. It takes faith. It takes faith. When we have to rely on faith to make it happen, that's how we know it's our sacred mission. That's how we know we're saying yes to life, yes to this beautiful life that we were given. So we are living a committed life. So living a committed life, another way to say that is I'm living my life in faith every moment. Every moment. Now this is why commitment is an act of courage and integrity and boldness. Living a committed life is bold and takes courage, because we are saying yes to showing up to our life in a bigger way. We are saying yes to being in integrity so that other people see we're doing the work we say we're going to do. Okay, so that is commitment. That is commitment. We have to become the version of ourselves we need to create that we have committed to. We're becoming something. We're becoming a new version of ourselves. I'm becoming a version of Deanna that is strong and healthy, right? I'm becoming a version of Deanna that is better at cleaning the house, you know? So we're becoming something. We're becoming something greater. So today I want to talk about transformation, and then the two things we need to get us started on this path to transformation. So the soul of commitment is transformation. Because when you live a life of faith, you're constantly transforming your life. You just have to. That's just how it is. So Lynne Twist says this about transformation. It is a complete and total shift in the nature and dynamics of what's happening. A complete and total shift in the nature and dynamics of what is happening. Now we can say life's always changing. Life is always changing, right? I mean, sometimes it changes a lot more, but life is always changing. But we often, when we talk about life always changing, we look at what has changed. And we look at the things that we don't like, right? I don't like, how this changed in our whatever. I don't like the weather. I don't like whatever. There's so many things that are changing. But what if we looked at life as not just being about change, but being about transformation? Because that's what our soul came to this planet for, to experience transformation, to expand the good, expand our territory, to be the activity of God in this world, to call forth and do greater things. So we are here to constantly be experiencing transformation. But see, when we talk about changing our life, sometimes we're just reacting to something that has just happened or currently exists, and we're saying things like, I don't like this, and this thing, it needs to change so I can be happy again. But what we're really doing is we're focusing on the problems. We're focusing on the problems. We're focusing on, like, we don't like this about politics, or we don't like this about corporate greed, or we don't like this about our medical system, or this about, some other system, or the schooling system, or just whatever. We don't like this. Of course, this is why Albert Einstein said this brilliant thing. We cannot solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And we're going to be going into a voting year here pretty quick, and we're going to see all those millions of commercials, right? And what are those commercials all going to be saying? Well, this is wrong and this is all messed up, right? They're going to be focusing on all the wrong things. And what happens when you focus on all the wrong things? How do you feel? Do you feel good? Right? No, we get agitated. We might get anxious. We might get that stomach ache kind of feeling. Okay, but if we're looking at a problem and we're complaining about the problem and we're sharing the problem with everybody, we're problem-oriented. And we're not walking in faith if we're focusing on all the things that are wrong. So we're a problem-oriented culture, actually. We have something called a negative bias. And it's okay that we have the negative bias. Our ancestors used a negative bias, and it's what kept them alive. Because when they stepped out their cave door, they had to, do you call it a door? I guess it would be the mouth of the cave, the entrance to the cave. When they stepped out the entrance of their cave, the first thing they had to do was this. Look for saber-toothed tigers. Right, that's what they had to do. Look for bears. They had to scan the environment, so they had a negative bias. None of our ancestors ever skipped out the front door just thinking what a great day it was going to be, because they first had to check and make sure they were safe. Okay, so that's our negative bias. But we are inundated now with negative messages. And I never really noticed this so much until, I think this was in the late 90s, early 2000s. I guess it was the early 2000s. And we're watching the news back in the day, when we watch news all the time. And you remember, how when you'd watch the news all the time and it would rain here, and the news would come on and it'd be like, Stormwatch 2000, right? That's what they would say, Stormwatch 2000. Well, my husband starts making fun of it. Like, it sprinkles outside, and he'll say, Stormwatch 2005, right? And I realize, I'm like, well, that's how they sell things. If you flip on the news and they just say, oh, well, there was a beautiful picnic at the park today, you just keep doing whatever you're doing. But if they say, there was a plane disappeared, right, or a train disappeared, you want to sit down and find out what happened. Like, what is this that's going on? So we do have a negative bias, but it's turned into a marketing technique for us, right? We are handled by savvy marketers who are telling their clients, yeah, just throw out something scary. They will sit and pay attention to you. Okay, so we do have this happening in our culture where problems are being thrown in our face all the time. Think about this problem and think about that problem. So I want to share the difference between change and transformation, because we don't have to get stuck in that. We do not have to get stuck in that. So change, usually we look at conditions around us, we decide there's something wrong, and that has to change so we can be happy. Remember when the pandemic hit and we were on shutdown, how many of us walked around saying, well, I just wanted to go back to how it was before. I'm just going to be glad when things go back to normal. I can't remember how many times they said that. I'm just going to be so glad when things go back to normal, because then I could be happy again, because I wouldn't have to worry about all this stuff. Okay? But transformation doesn't judge a condition. It just sees that the current conditions are the perfect starting point. Whatever's happening is happening, and we can't really do much about it. Okay, so change tends to blame, point a finger, judge, accuse, but change can also create division, right? If we don't like something that's happening in our environment, but somebody else does like it, then we're going to think they're wrong, or they'll think we are wrong. So it can cause division. But see, transformation accepts the current reality as the starting point. This is what's going on. When we are going through the process of transformation, when we are living a life in faith, no matter what's happening right now, we can say to ourselves, well, I trust God working through me. I trust that I will be guided to do the next best thing. So right now, this is the perfect platform for me to get started. This is the perfect platform for me to take the next step, because it's what it is. And God is bigger than anything in its way. Right? God is bigger than any obstacle we could make up, any condition we can come up with. So through transformation, we recognize that it's this moment is the pathway to greater things, this moment. So if we're going to recognize that what's happening, and we're going to decide it's okay to use it as a starting off point, that it's a pathway to greater things, now is when we have to embody faith. We can't focus on the problem and do this at the same time. We have to focus on faith. We have to embody faith. We have to remember why we were put here, right? What we are here to call forth into our lives. So we accept what's happening, but also in faith, because we're doing something new, because whenever we act in faith, we're always going to do something new. We're always going to be stepping out of our comfort zone, because calling forth greater things, we're not calling forth the old stuff we already did. We're calling forth greater things. We're doing greater things. We're not doing mediocre things. That's in the comfort zone. We're not doing stuff we've done a million times and it's real easy for us. That doesn't take faith to do what's easy. We're doing greater things. Now, when we are acting in faith and we are doing greater things, you could say the universe conspires to support us and help us along that path. We experience more synchronicity. We get the guidance to be in the right place at the right time. We meet the right people. Right? The right book, catches our eye when we're at the bookstore. Okay, so the soul of commitment is transformation. Now, to experience transformation, we want to do two things. And the first of these is to look at the stories that we tell about ourselves. Are we telling stories where we are the victim or the victor? And we tell stories all the time. So I'm going to tell a story. This happened years ago, but it was because, when it happened. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe that happened. This is amazing, because it's really funny. So I'm at the bank, and I'm just going to make a deposit. And there's a lady standing behind me. But, when you move along the lines at the bank, sometimes you're standing next to each other in the bank, And she's standing right here, and she says, wow, what a week I've had. And I'm like, wow, really? And she goes, yeah, I run my own business. I have a house cleaning business. I said, wow, okay. And she said, but I lost 2 clients this week, or last week, and it was really hard. I was real worried. But with the free time, I watched some NASCAR. I love NASCAR, and I never get to watch it. But so I watched some NASCAR. Oh, but then I got 2 new clients, and they replaced those clients. I said, wow, that's yay. Then she says, oh, but this other thing happened. And she does this with her thumb, and there's a Band-Aid on it. She says, I cut my thumb. I thought I was going to have to go to the ER. There was just blood everywhere. But I stopped the bleeding, and I got it cleaned up, and it was okay. I said, whoa, that's great news. Nobody wants to go to the ER. And she says, oh, but then I was cleaning, and I twisted my neck wrong, and I could barely move it. Like I couldn't move my neck at all. I just knew I was crippled. I don't have very good health insurance. But I went to my chiropractor, and he fixed me. He was able to get everything back into space. And I said, wow. She goes, yeah, I had the worst week ever. The worst week. So then I had to open my mouth, which really it wasn't any of my business to open my mouth. But I did, and I said, well, you lost 2 clients, and you got to watch NASCAR, but then you got new clients to replace them. And then you didn't have to go to the ER for your thumb. And that's a blessing. And your chiropractor helped you, and you don't have any neck pain. I don't know. Sounds like you had a pretty good week to me. Okay, so we're standing next to each other in this line. Okay, this is what she does. She just turns away from me. Just turns away from me. She did not like seeing her story in a more positive context. But that gave me a great story to tell for years and years and years. You know what? We don't live in a reality. We don't live in a reality. We live in the stories and the perceptions that we're telling ourselves all the time. That's what we're living in. It's our story that makes us a victim. It's our story that makes us the victor. So we want to look at our stories. How do our conversations go with other people? Right? Are we blaming and are we complaining? What's our inner dialogue doing? Right? Is our inner dialogue saying things like, oh, this is too hard. I'm not smart enough. I'll never be able to do this. Is our inner dialogue crushing us? Is our inner dialogue making us less than? Because we're put here to do greater things. Right? We're not put here to sit around and feel sorry for ourselves and think how nothing good ever happens to us. We're put here to see the divine in all things, to see God as the everywhere presence that it is. We're put here to see God in each other and in everything that's ever been and everything that's yet to be. We're put here to see all that and remember all that, right? So the stories that we say and we tell, they change us because we're not living in a reality. We're living in the stories we tell ourselves. So there actually has to be a shift within ourselves before we can experience transformation and do these greater things that we are called to do. The shift happens inside of us. We have to change our stories. We have to change our story from victim to victor and to see our current experience as the means to have a breakthrough rather than to see our life just crashing down or the breakdown, right? Breakthrough or breakdown. That's what we're choosing between. So we do have to learn to tell a better story, right? We want to tell a story that redefines our current reality. Telling a better story. So where are we speaking words of limitation and scarcity in our life, right? Where are we seeing that there's not plenty? Where are we seeing that, when I talk about plenty, we live in a world of sufficiency. There actually is plenty. It's just not passed around very well. But we also live in a universe of plenty. We live in a universe of plenty of ideas and opportunities to be inspired to do something, to do these greater things. And so the shift happens within us when we change the story that we are telling about our life. Then when we shift the story, then something else happens. This opens us to possibilities. We have to be open to possibilities in order to experience transformation. We have to be open to possibilities to experience greater things and to do those greater things. So, do we believe our faith can take us anywhere, no matter what's going on in the world? Do we believe that with faith everything is possible or anything is possible? Or are we limiting God? Are we limiting how God works in our life? Are we thinking, well, I would like to do this big thing. I would like to travel to England, but, I don't know, that would be really hard to set all that up. I guess all that's really possible for me in my world is to go to Palm Springs, right? That's not having faith. We could drive to Palm Springs, any of us. We could just get in our cars right now and just make an exodus to Palm Springs. What do we want to do that's going to take faith so that we can prove that we are putting all of our trust in knowing in those divine forces? What can we do that takes faith, that will take us anywhere? Usually someplace we wouldn't imagine that we would have ended up. I don't think Moses got up one morning and knew and imagined he'd be heading off to Egypt. Moses didn't imagine that. Yeah, so what is it? Where can we place our faith? What can we do? What can we do that's bigger than what we can imagine? Now, when we're telling a story where we're a victim, we don't see the possibilities. All we'll see is the problem. When we are telling a story where we're a victim, all we're gonna feel or believe is that we're victims of circumstance, we're victims of conditions, we're victims of the climate. Now, we may think we're actually being realistic, and maybe we are being realistic, maybe there are things to consider, but if we're limiting ourselves and telling a victim story about ourselves because of conditions, what happens is we're gonna feel disempowered. We're not going to believe that God can work through us in bigger ways. We're going to feel like we're disempowered. And why does God work through other people to do great things, but not me? What am I doing wrong? Don't I deserve it? Where did I mess this up? When we get stuck thinking that these conditions are controlling us, we're going to keep looking for something out there to change first. We're not going to be looking at how God can work through us to transform our lives. We're going to be looking out there and thinking, somebody needs to change that so I can be happy. But see, every time we act in faith, we are stepping out of our comfort zone. We are doing greater things. And that is the feeling that we're after. That is the joy. That's what brings joy and peace into our hearts, is listening and acting in faith. We listen and we act when God speaks. That is what brings us so much joy. It's not the thing we get in the end. That's the demonstration that reminds us, whoa, that one time when I listened and acted in faith, that I accomplished this thing. So if a person who accomplished that by acting in faith can also accomplish this bigger thing. When I had my kids at home with a midwife, that was a pretty big deal. And after that experience, I felt that in my heart. What couldn't a woman do who had her babies at home? What couldn't I do? And when we listen and act in faith and we do the next big thing, that's what we start believing and understanding about ourselves. Well, in faith, what couldn't I do? What couldn't I do? And here's the other thing we want to think about. We're unity, right? This is a unity. In unity, we believe that, God is all things, and that means me, and that means you. That means each of us are an extension. We are the creation of God walking around on this planet in these bodies right now to be the activity of God in this world, okay? So God is all things, and that means us also. We're an expression of that, but that also means the ideas that we get and the inspirations that we get to do the next big thing. Now also, there's the law of correspondence, right? As within, so without. Right? And so if we're a victim in here, it's going to limit us as we're living our lives. And it's really when we're constantly worrying and we are constantly stressing and complaining about a situation in our life, we're doing a negative prayer. We're pouring all of this energy into something we don't want, and we give it more and more power in our life. That's what happens when we are focused on what we think is wrong out there, and we don't believe that we can actually, just by acting in faith, can create change and transformation in our own lives. And have you ever noticed, the more you complain about something, the more you have to complain about that something? Right? We get a lot more to complain about when we keep complaining. So I recently heard this. Victimization is obedience to a system of limitation. It's a victimization. We keep ourselves limited, right? When we keep putting ourselves down, keep believing we can't do these greater things, there's something wrong with us. Optimism. Getting back to optimism. Are we open to possibilities? Optimism is an act of revolution that leads to transformation. Optimism is not about positive thinking. Positive thinking can actually get toxic. I remember when I first got into like the New Agey community, and I would hear this thing, act as if, right? I would hear this expression, act as if. And I didn't understand it at the time, and nobody really explained it to me. How I heard it was pretend you're what you want to be. Pretend you're what you want to be. And I just got into massage therapy, and I had like my weekly schedule, and like I had like 3 people, but I wanted 15 people. So pretend you're successful. Pretend you're successful. And so somebody would come in. It's like, Deanna, do you have any openings this week? Oh, I don't know. I'm pretty full. I'm pretty packed. Oh, wait, you are in luck. I just had one person cancel. Oh, good. What time? Oh, what time did you need? I wasn't very good at pretending. No, acting as if is really about reminding ourselves, okay, God is all things, and so where does that leave me? I'm in that allness. That infinite power, that living presence is at work through me, right? And I'm going to act that way. I'm going to stop telling myself these stories that crush me. I'm going to stop speaking the words of lack and limitation. Okay, that's acting as if. And so how we want to show up in our lives is as a grounded optimist. Okay, optimism is different. Optimism accepts the current conditions as a starting point. Knowing that in faith, being open to possibilities, we don't even know what could happen next. Like, we don't even know what good could be brought into our life because we are surrendering to God. We're deciding, okay, I'm in faith. What's next? I'm in this situation right now, and maybe it's money, okay? I'm living in this situation right now, and I just don't have enough money, and it's not like I can increase my hours, and I just don't have enough money, and I'm really worried about money. I'm so worried about money. I'm worried about money. But wait. God is all things. And I am included in that all. I am included in that. I'm not dropped off on this planet. I'm not here all by myself. I'm not here forgotten. But I have to remember this. And okay, maybe things are really tough right now. But when I act in faith, there's always something that comes forth and surprises me. When I act in faith, when I can just remember that, okay, dear God, I don't even know what to do next. So I'm just gonna like just be a loving person and pray and have some patience and maybe send some blessings to some people and I'm just going to wait for that guidance to tell me the next thing to do. And like, who knows how that could show up in my life? I mean, really, come on, we're talking about the allness, right? How do you limit the all? How do you limit God? You don't limit God. So this obstacle that I see in my way, right? It's not big enough to slow down love. It's not big enough to slow down God. God is bigger than anything in its way. Love is bigger than anything in its way. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know what that might look like. But I know that all things are possible. Anything is possible to somebody who's in faith. And I'm just going to remind myself of that right now. That's all I have to do right now. Okay, so that's the difference between positive thinking and optimism. Okay, right now is a starting point. No matter what's going on, it's a starting point. Greater things can happen from here. We don't have to improve this to then get something better, right? I remember somebody telling me that they weren't going to take any keyboard lessons until they could play the keyboard because they didn't want to be embarrassed in front of the keyboard teacher. Okay, we don't do that. We start where we are. Where we are right now is the sacred ground. We don't have to get better at anything, right? We're already ready to do the next greater thing. We're already ready to listen and act in faith. We're already ready for that. Okay, we don't have to improve anything. Now, only a visionary, only somebody willing to go through transformation can generate these new possibilities because we have to be in faith. And when we go from just observing conditions and worrying about conditions and fretting about conditions to going to a place where this is my starting point, what good could come out of here? Because it could be surprising. We don't even know how great. If God's the everywhere presence, like we don't even know where this good could come from. It could come from the most unexpected sources. We become a visionary then. Because we know there's room for greatness. but we don't have to judge anything to make it bad. We don't have to make it wrong, right? We just open the way to live our lives in faith. And we have to live in faith because when we're doing greater things and we want to expand our territory, which is what we're here to do, doing greater things means we're going into unknown territory. We're going someplace we have never gone before. It's out of our comfort zone. And we have to be in faith to do that. So here is our call to action this week. I like this affirmation. It's just fun. I am a grounded optimist. My faith opens doors where only walls had been. I know somebody said that. I don't remember who said open doors where only walls had been. I think it was Rumi, maybe. But let's say that together. I am a grounded optimist. My faith opens doors where only walls had been. When we tell a better story, we become creators of possibilities. We're calling forth greater possibilities. When we become a grounded optimist, we set in motion the transformation that happens within us. And we're here to be constantly transforming ourselves, right? To become a brighter and brighter version of ourselves all the time. Now, unity is called a path for transformation. Unity is called a path for transformation because God is all things, and that means each one of us, we're an expression of God walking around on this planet. We create our experiences through our way of thinking and acting. Are we thinking like a victim or thinking like a victor? Are we feeling suppressed or are we walking in faith? We create our experiences through our way of thinking and acting. Affirmative prayer, meditation, this aligns us more deeply with the infinite within us, right? Heaven is within us. God is within us. And it's right there because it's everywhere present. So all we have to do is just take a nice deep breath. Like the easiest way, take a nice deep breath. Put your hand on your heart. Dear God. Dear God, just right from there, Mother, Father, God, the allness, the living presence at work. And it's just not enough to know this. We have to live this. So the unity principles, these are the principles you'd use if you wanted to have a better career, start a business, improve your relationships, maybe start a family, start a entrepreneurial thing, or a nonprofit, or build a house, or travel around the world, anything that you want to do that feels like it's so big you don't know how you'd manage to do it. Unity offers a path for transforming every area of our life. It doesn't matter. I use these principles to get my puppy. This little dog over here, I wanted her for 20 years, and it was really hard. It was hard. And I actually had to show up in faith because it turned out I was blocking opportunities to get a dog. I was blocking. And see, you're thinking, well, it's a dog. It's a dog. Well, to me, it was the biggest mountain. We all have our own mountains. All of us each have our own mountains. All of us have our own things we struggle with. Okay, so our invitation for this week, it would be fun to do this together. But as we go through this week, let's just think about, what story am I telling myself? Because our story opens the gateway to transformation, or it shuts the gateway to transformation. So what's our inner dialogue doing? Is it complaining? Or is it speaking words of abundance and love? And then, am I open to possibilities? Am I open to possibilities? Right? Sometimes we think that we want something in our life, but it has to happen our way. Like it has to happen our way. Like my way to get my puppy was, well, somebody just has to give it to me because I just can't handle all the paperwork and red tape. There's no paperwork or red tape. I don't know why I thought that, but I was making it really complicated. I had one way it was going to happen because that's how I got my first Australian Shepherd. Somebody gave her to me, right? I wasn't open to like the crazy ways that it ended up happening. Okay, so am I open to possibilities? Or am I focused on the conditions in my life? Am I focused on thinking, well, this has to change so I can be happy, or if this changes, it has to happen my way. It can only happen my way. Right? Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're doing? I found this quote from Buckminster Fuller. This is a really long quote, but I want to read this. I'm going to read this to you, and if you want, close your eyes and receive this quote. Buckminster Fuller was an architect. He was a philosopher. He was a writer. And he was a visionary who saw the sufficiency and abundance of this planet, and he wanted everybody to understand this, right? He wanted everybody to understand they could live a good life if they could be a person of sufficiency themselves. So if you want to receive this, never forget that you are one of a kind. Never forget that if there weren't any need for you in all your uniqueness to be on this earth, you wouldn't be here in the first place. And never forget, no matter how overwhelming life's challenges and problems seem to be, that one person can make a difference in the world. In fact, it is always because of one person that all the changes that matter in the world come about. So be that person. He shared a story that you look at the biggest ship, and his example was the Queen Mary. And at the back of the Queen Mary, there's a rudder. Okay, now that's a big ship, right? Queen Mary's a big ship. There's a rudder. But there was this little tiny piece of equipment that actually steered the rudder, right? Big giant ship and even a big rudder. Even all of us together, we probably couldn't push against this rudder and turn the ship, but a tiny, tiny piece of equipment can. And that he's comparing us to that. Maybe we're each only just one person, but one person can affect other people. And then those people affect other people. Okay? We are ordinary people, but we become extraordinary because we say yes to life and we pass that on. So remember that you are the expression of the living presence that created all things. You are a unique, one-time cosmic event. You are a unique, one-time cosmic event here on this planet right now. You were created with purpose and intention. You were created to be here right now. Surrender to this. Live in this truth, because that is how we create heaven on earth. And so it is.